good afternoon, morning. I'm not sure. I'm in England today, guys. I've been traveling Europe now we're on day 22. So it's been quite the month. Today on Glam and Grind, Rach is unable to join us, but we have an incredible guest, Wendy Paige Sterling. You guys, you're going to be so pumped once you hear about all the things that Wendy does. And I'm so excited to get to know her myself. I've read her bio and obviously, looked into all the things she's doing, followed her on LinkedIn, subscribed to her newsletter. So I'm excited to get some good energy my way as well. And as you all know, I am a firm energy believer. So I believe what you put out into the universe, you get back tenfold. And we always say generosity breeds abundance. And we've just kind of given that energy now for about 10 years or so, I'd say at least, when we figured out, that energy is a really important part of our life. And so you're doing incredible and amazing things. You want to talk about today really how mompreneurs can integrate that intuition into their business strategies to create a legacy of wealth, and to support their family and just really have good energy around them to continue to breed great things. And so welcome, Wendy, to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, it's half of us today, but it's me, and I'm super excited because this is something that I'm all about. And we truly believe, like I said, following that energy flow is super important. So tell me a little bit about what you do. I mean, it says you're an intuitive leadership mentor coach. So that's pretty big. I mean, that's really low. So I want you to break that down for us and kind of tell us, what's your daily like and what are you doing for folks? And I know because I've read the bio, but I want you to, just introduce a little bit about what you're doing and how this energy thing works.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here and to share my wisdom with your audience today. If you had asked me even 10 years ago if I would be sitting where I am today, I would have thought you were crazy. So, it's really, I have followed what I preach, I have followed, even just as early as about 8 years ago. And so essentially what I do is what I used to be really bad at, and now I've become an expert in. And ultimately what that is really learning to tune into my intuitive I can voice and to tune out my ego so that I am operating from my highest and best place so that I can start making an impact in this world that feels authentic. And like, I feel like I am, to the point of our show today is really enabling myself to leave that legacy that I look back on feeling really proud about. And so what I help my clients to do is to really step into the power of what it is that they know is possible for them. So many times I feel like we either look to other people to tell us who it is that we are, we seek external validation. And really what my clients gain from learning from me is that you've got the power within, right? It's like my favorite Wizard of Oz quote. It's, Dorothy, you've always had the power, my dear. You just had to learn it for yourself. And ultimately, that's really what I guide my clients through. And ultimately, what that translates into for them is becoming what I call disruptors in their industry, which ultimately means building your own table because the ones that have been built for us or that we've been invited to just don't work. And it doesn't work because I'm a mom, I am a stepmom, I am a dog mom, I am a daughter, I am a wife, I am all these things, right? And I can't be, obviously I wear multiple hats, and at the same time, I do what works for me. I show up authentically as me in all these areas. And what I used to do was, okay, who am I here? Who am I here? Who am I here? Right? It's like, okay, I'm playing off of everybody in my life, trying to figure out who I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to do. And really, it's kind of that reverse psychology that I help my clients to kind of unlearn decades of behavior and relearning, just standing in the power of who it is that you are and showing up that way no matter what.
Yeah, that's incredible. I resounded with so many of the things that you just said because I'm a mom of 4 kiddos. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I am a business scaling and growth legacy growth coach. I've got so many hats that, yes, sometimes it's like, who do you need to show up as today? And one thing that, we are really committed to in our family life, and even my husband and I's relationship, we're committed to being like fully ourselves as much as we can, right? So, like you're saying, you're breaking through that old trauma. You have to go through so much learning as we get. I felt like for me, it was as I was getting older, I had to unlearn or reframe a lot of my social schemas from when I was young, because I did have, a different type of upbringing, I guess, and life than I have now, in a lot of ways, financially, professionally,
Yeah,
personally. I've grown a lot as a human. I feel like as we go through different things in our life, the narrative changes as well, right? And so, also who I'm committed to being for me is important now when I just turned 50. So we talk about that a lot, is like the ability to really be who you are, and lead authentically and be authentic. So much social media is inauthentic, and so it's hard these days to sift through the authenticity, right? And the integrity. For us, like, integrity is a non-negotiable, and so that really for us frames the authenticity of who we are, because there are things that are not that are non-negotiable, right? But I feel like it is really a challenge for especially women, I would say, because we have a lot of hats that we have to kind of be wearing, or roles that we're fulfilling. Like you said, you're a daughter, you're a mom, you have different roles in life, and people react to you differently based on the role, right? And so staying authentic, I think, is a challenge. So I'm super excited to hear how you help your clients do this. And so let's start from the beginning in terms of unpacking that trauma. Wendy,
sure.
how do you help your clients get started on really like captivating that unpacking presence? Because I think that's probably a big part of your role.
Oh, 100%. I mean, God knows we all have our trauma, we have our baggage. And ultimately, what I teach my clients to do is to, instead of seeing their baggage as a weight, to actually see it as their parachute. And that is exactly what I do. It's what I've done. It's what I've done as soon as last week. Just to share a little bit about my own story to help explain how it is that I, sort of, not only qualified to be doing this, but also just how it is that I teach my clients to do the same. I mean, literally, it was just 8 years ago. I was in what I thought was the, Facebook facade life and marriage, had the Facebook facade perfect job. I had 20-year corporate career as an executive in ad sales for leading women's lifestyle brands. My now ex-husband, lead attorney, like entertainment industry, two beautiful boys. Like, we had this perfect life on social media, to your point, right?
Mhm.
And literally 8 years ago, almost a month from today, will be 8 years, which is kind of crazy. The foundation of that life completely was pulled out from underneath me when I realized that my now ex-husband was actually having an affair with a colleague. And it was in that moment that my intuition came back into my life. And I say back into my life because I had been taught to ignore it for the 4 decades prior. When I was a little girl, I am on both sides of my family, Holocaust generation. Both my grandparents are Holocaust survivors on both sides. And so everything I was taught was about fitting in. And me as a little girl, not who I was. I was the rebel. I was the one who had an opinion. I'm the one who stood out. I was jumping all over the place. I was the tomboy, getting into
It's
everything.
interesting. We all attract each other. All these like black sheep, right? We're all sort of different from the grain. So, but
Yes,
I
very
love.
different from my older sister. Like, she did not pave that path for me in any way. So, when I was a little girl, it was, I had intuitive encounters. Recalling later in life, what I was told were imaginary friends were actually my spirit guides, coming to me then. And they left for about 4 decades because I was getting reprimanded, and it was, oh, wait, I can't be me. I have to be who they want me to be. And so I had brought that into my marriage, and I had ignored every sign that was literally in front of my face for a very long time. And so when
I'm going to interrupt you for a second, Wendy. Do you feel like, because I'm super intuitive too, and I don't know if it's part of my upbringing or not, or just spiritually who I am, but I have really good intuition about people. Do you think you're born with that intuition? Like people just have a stronger intuition spirit, or what do you feel about that?
So my belief is that I think that everyone is born with it. Okay. I think that society impacts each of us differently and either, sort of trains us to go down one path or another. I believe that everyone has the power to tap into it. It just requires a couple of things, right? It requires, number one, your openness to it, right? A belief, having faith in a higher power. For me, it's God. For other people, call it universe, spirit guides, angels. I believe in God. And I also believe that I do have spirit guides and angels. So for me, it's like I have a spiritual team behind me. And I think that a lot of us, think about it. We're more babies. We're born into this world, just like, cry when we need something and people attend to us, right? And I do believe that I think a lot of us as young children, I think that we are acting in accordance and in alignment with our intuition. However, society, teachers, parents, family members, friends, impact us in how it is that we are reflecting that, speaking into it by either telling us, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Right. And to me, what I call that, and how I really, and I infuse this into the foundation of the work that I do, is, since when did we stop being curious? Right? When we're curious, we're allowing people to have their experiences. We're just asking for like a ticket to get on the train so that we can see what it is that they're seeing. But what ends up happening is that we were like, no, you're on the wrong train. You're supposed to be on this train. Like, get off this train. What are you talking about? Right? You're on the wrong train. And so ultimately, like, that's my belief system around why I do think that we're all born with it. I think that we are all capable of it. And the way back into it is by being curious, right? Not just with other people, but also being curious within ourselves, and learning that when you want to understand if it's your intuition or not, it's about getting curious around, is this truly like the wisdom, or is this my ego? Is this because I'm afraid and my ego thinks it's trying to protect me and it's trying to save face, it's trying to fit in, it's trying to look good, right? Or is it really, is it really my intuition? Because typically your intuition, right, playing back into what it is that I do, your intuition is the disruptor. At the end of the day, that's the disruptor. And so if you're not willing to be disruptive and allow that to become your true authentic voice, then you're going to stay, sort of, with the blinders on. You're going to stay in ego. You're going to allow fear to continue to run your life. And that's a choice. But at any given time, I do firmly believe, like with every bone in my body, that we all have the power to be intuitive.
Yeah, I love that. And I really, truly in my heart believe I've kind of always been a natural disruptor. So yeah, I push the limits, I push the boundaries, I make myself extremely uncomfortable, because that's when I find I have the most growth. I see in my kids, though, a lot of what you're saying, about the ego pushing, like, how do I want to be seen, especially in these teen years. I wish you did a teen disruptor, and like you have a teen disruptor.
I do. I have two. I have a 14 and an 18-year-old, and man.
So we have 13, 14, 18, 20 now. And I'm seeing like the evolution. The 20-year-old has definitely embraced this idea of change and disruption. But I see the other ones trying to find their way through that, right? And so when I asked you about like, is it natural? I asked because I think my intuition was life-saving for me. Because I was in survival mode as a kid, right? So my parents had divorced. I was really young. My mom worked 3 jobs. You know, she was always trying to just make ends meet for us. And I was I ended up having to do a lot of the parenting things because she was working. So I did, get home, take my brother, all the things. So not that she wasn't doing them, she was working to make sure we were okay, right? So, but I think in that process, my intuition really built itself. But it built itself as a survival mechanism. Like I didn't feel like this person was a good person, or I felt this vibe was wrong around me, or I had this feeling something happened at the house, right? Like these weird things, and still today I have a really like strong partnership with my intuition. I feel like my intuition is my guide. Like I will not, if I don't feel 100%, and I tell my students and my coaching clients as well, like if your gut says no, just don't do it. Not right now. Give it time and work it through. But if you're really truly feeling like something is pushing you against the grain, you're probably better about whether it's ego or not. For me, though, it is really a gut feel. Like if I get that weird feel in my gut, I'm done. And people think it's kind of crazy when I say that, but I'm like, no, even business deals, things that are like multi-million dollars, I will be right at the end and something will say, no, girl, it's not the right place for you. And I will leave. Like I will back out of that. Not for ego. I just get this, I don't know, this intuition response. But I do have to fight the ego, I think, as well, because there's always that mind portion that is giving you the, well, what ifs and the, hey, don't, and like, that's not, it's more mine as a gut feeling. Like I know when it's my intuition talking versus my stupidity, I call it, or my ridiculous mind, because I do have anxiety, and I've had anxiety all my life. And so I have to fight that fight or flight a lot with my intuition. And so interesting that you're saying these things, because I really didn't know what was going on until you sort of explained it, in the way that you did. But I really do feel like so many people probably have that cognitive dissonance and that struggle between ego and what is real intuition, or where you should be guided towards. So do you do activities with them, or do you do a process where you sort of unblock that, or how does that work?
Yeah. So I have a 7-step, 7 steps that I walk my clients through, and I love acronyms. My background is in marketing. So that's my jam.
Easy to remember. So
yes.
So 7 steps. Okay.
So there's 7 steps, and the acronym is all about the acronym is the word amplify. And it's about amplifying, your intuition so that you can amplify your abundance, right? And abundance doesn't always equate to money, right? It could be love, it could be relationships, connection, right? Like whatever it is. And so the 7 steps are, number 1, the A is all about awareness, right? So understanding what it is that is being said, because what we're so good at is moving into judgment really quickly, right? It's like we have a thought and then we go into judgment, and either intuition comes in, or 99% of the time it's fear and our ego. So I teach my clients how it is that they can distinguish between the two. And you said it beautifully, which is ultimately the awareness piece is all about tuning into your body and to fight the mind being the powerhouse. Because you said it, like, where in your body that gut feeling comes in. For me, I know where my gut comes in. And then I also know where fear plays. So when I'm feeling fear fear comes in my throat and my chest. And then when it's my intuition, it's like as low as like my sacral, like it is that low. It's not it's not necessarily my solar plexus. It's really the bottom of the bottom of that, right by my sacral chakra. So for me, like I teach my clients to really tune in and to understand and to have that awareness around where it is that their intuition is coming into play. The M is all about manifesting, right? So what we don't necessarily, I think, realize is like, we are powerful manifestors. So if you are manifesting, I don't have enough money in my bank account. Well, yeah, you're going to keep manifesting that. Congratulations.
And they always say too, if you're manifesting that, you're the first person to say it and the first person to hear that, right? So
yes,
like your words are so important. And I think people don't realize, like, when they say, like, I hear a lot of folks that blame other people, right? Like that
so
game,
easy.
like, well, they did this to me, and so now my life is terrible because of this person. It's like, but the more you say that, the more you're giving power to this life being terrible because you're saying it's, So I feel like you're totally right in the sense of you need to change your mouth first, like what you're saying to yourself, because your mind is absorbing that. Like, you're the first person to hear that. I read that somewhere once, and I was like, yes, like you really have to change your language, right, in order to change that thought process. And I don't think many people can unblock that naturally. Like, I think that they need help, like a person, a therapist. I forget exactly what the title was, but you said that you did, and I was trying to remember. Yes, it's theta healing and something else.
So I'm a theta healer. I'm also a sound healer. Those are my modalities that I utilize with my clients to help heal some of those beliefs. I don't know if those were the ones that you were.
Those were probably it. Yeah, because like, obviously you're a leadership mentor coach, an intuitive leadership mentor coach. But I did see that you had all these other like things that you were using in order to sort of release or untap that sort of, blocked up, or I guess blocked energy. I'm not sure what you would call it, but
well, they're stories, right? It's stories that are creating feelings, that are creating thoughts, that are sometimes we're not even conscious of them. What I love about the theta healing that I do is it allows me to also tap into generational trauma that has been passed, right? Like as I shared at the top of the episode, I have Holocaust trauma on both sides of my family. So you guys can only imagine the money stories that I had to undo and unwind and unlearn, even stories that manifested in my divorce that, continue to manifest to this day of like other iterations. And so part of the M in the manifesting is like getting caught, like allowing the awareness, right? One step builds onto the next, right? It's like you've got to have the awareness to be able to see what it is that you have been manifesting, to be able to shift and start manifesting something different that it is that you desire, because your intuition, you're listening to your fears, so you're manifesting exactly what you don't want. So when you tap into your intuition, okay, now what is it that you would prefer to manifest instead, right?
And change the narrative, right? And so, like you, my family, both sides, my mom and dad, I was first generation Canadian. So my parents were Italian. My grandparents, they lived through the war. My grandpa was a soldier. He was under the regime of Hitler, all the things, right? So when you talk about like money and depression, right? Living without anything, reframing that mindset of save, because that day's going to come, right? That doomsday thinking. And so even in my book, I had a lot of reflection on, wow, this is why I had to do a lot of work, because there is narrative of, what they knew and what we knew and what we were taught. know that there was always a scarcity mindset
Yes.
versus an abundant mindset. And I really think in this generation is really where we've started to move that, because
Yes.
prior to that, I think people didn't even know that that was really what was going on.
Yes. 100%. And it's so important. I think what you said is so valuable because our actions are aligning with our thoughts.
Mhm.
And so in order for you to shift your actions, you've got to realign your thoughts, right? Which is really what this process is all about, and how it is that you get to shift the outcomes that you are creating in your life, in your business, in your relationships, whatever it is. It's so incredibly important. Moving into the P, how does, we've been through the A, we've been through the M. So now the P is all about propelling forward in your purpose, right? So this means that you get to create the momentum that comes with clarity and intention, right? When you're leading with fear, it's very foggy, and it's like shooting, it's like throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it's going to stick. You're like, it should stick, right? It's going to stick, it's ready, but sometimes it may not. And so it's important that we really pay attention to our inner knowing, to our intuition, in order for us to really propel ourselves forward, to create that momentum that ultimately is going to be in alignment with your values, which is a big thing. And typically when your fear is driving the bus, you're out of alignment with your values. You're justifying that you might be in alignment with them, versus when you're in alignment with your intuition, you're really in full, deep alignment with your values, because at the end of the day, like, that is who you are, right? That is your essence, I call it.
It's like when you feel balanced, right?
Correct.
When you feel like, okay, I'm not out of balance because I'm living my true self, or I'm in my true space.
Exactly. And so what that requires of us, in order for us to move forward, right, to be in momentum, to propel forward in purpose, right? Purpose is in alignment with our values. What we have to do then is something that I think as a society we've become really bad at, which is listening. Listening to communicate, listening to connect, not listening to respond or to react, right? So many times, like, think about it. How many times have you been in a conversation with someone where they have said something, and either you want to interrupt them, or you have something that you want to say and you tune out the rest of the conversation? You're not even listening to them because you're in your head, either in defensive mode. I want to say something and prove that I'm smart. Like, you just tune out the rest of the conversation. We're all guilty of that, by the way, right?
Oh,
And so what's really important, and this is where this whole lens of curiosity comes in, is you're reacting to what it is that they're saying because of a story, because of your past, but you're not holding space for the other person. And ultimately, you're actually not holding space for yourself. You're not listening to yourself. Like, we have shut ourselves down. We've learned to do this so easily. It hurts my heart, to be honest with you. And so our ability to cultivate listening, right, to hear and to really trust that intuitive guidance is going to require you to silence your head, to be able to listen more deeply, because your intuition is a whisper, you guys. It's not yelling at you. It is quietly saying, hey, I'm feeling this is the way that we're supposed to go. Like, this is the way. But your ego is like, what are you doing? This is so stupid. You've done this before and this happened, right? Versus, we got this. I've got you. This is an alignment, right? And so what we've done is we've been conditioned to really continue to tune down the volume of our intuition and tune up that ego, tune up that fear. And so by listening to our intuition at this step of the game is really, it's listening to the silence, recognizing what I call, for my show, my podcast is called The Power in the Pause, right? It's really recognizing that there is that power, but you can't get there until you choose to listen. The L then dovetails into the I, which is all about ignition. Like, I love the word ignite. Like that word just like lights me up immediately. So when you listen, that's where the ignition comes from. Like, that's the fuel source, right? So that enables you, when you finally hear your intuition, it lights you up, it ignites your soul, and then creates the action by which you take the next step. It's how you make decisions. That's where joy and enthusiasm and excitement comes from. When we're in fear, it's like we're walking on eggshells along the way. It feels stressful, it feels hard, versus intuition. Oh, it's like you're at a resort and you're getting a massage, or it's easy and it's calm and it's peaceful and you trust and you're in this flow. Because without that ignition of your soul in the slowdown, right, in the listen, in the slowdown of listening to your intuition, you can't get to the F, which is where you find the abundance. You guys, it has been staring at you in the face. It has been trying to tell you, it has been trying to manifest, but you've been in your own way. And so getting to the F is going to require these prior steps so that each and every one of you can get to the finding abundance that's literally going to be right in front of you. The path will illuminate. You will not see it when you're in the A step of awareness. What you will get to feel in the intuition is the trust in the surrender to get to the F in this, in my steps, where you actually find the abundance, because it is not gonna look in any way, shape, or form the way you thought. It never does. It never does. And it's going to be unconventional. It might be a little like, really? This is like, oh, I wasn't expecting this, right? And that's the beauty of our intuition. So in the end, right, the why is all about yielding into the surrender, right? Opening yourself up. By the end, you're at this place where you are completely opening yourself up to God and to a higher power's wisdom and intuition and opportunities, right? I've called in abundance, and I've seen, like, my ego is like, it's going to come in this way, this many clients, this event, da, da, da. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, God has handed me a client out of thin air at an event I went to that I was like, wait, this is networking. Like, I just got a client from, like, what is going on? Right. So imagine, right, how that feels, right? Stepping into the surrender and stop trying to control everything. The abundance comes when you're in alignment with your intuition, and it comes tenfold, versus when you're trying to control, you're using all this energy. Like, it really is, it's an energy and it's a frequency shift that I believe the planet is being confronted with at this very moment. And so we all have the opportunity at any given moment, at any given time, to shift our frequency, to shift the way that we go about normally doing things, because the doing will come so much more easily when you allow yourself to live, to stand, to embody your beingness, which is where your intuition lives. And that will make the doing so much easier. I'm telling you, I spent, I was in corporate. I was like proud of my doing. I was like, I am a badass doer. Give me a checklist. I will get that crap done. Like, no problem. Right. I'm sure so many people listening can relate to that, right? Like, it's like a badge of honor. Like, I got 10 things done today. And it's like, okay, well, how present were you for any of that? What do you mean? I could have done those 10 things in probably less time had I gone about doing them differently, right? They would have flowed a lot more easily, or new things could have come in that would have allowed those other things to happen that much more quickly. And so really, it's all about the slowdown and seeing, or I should say it this way, it's about seeing the speed in the slowdown. Because let me ask you this, how is the speed currently working for you? I mean, honestly, right? Like, ask yourself, like, in the hustle, how is that working for you? How is the hustle working? because I got to tell you, I was exhausted being in the hustle. And what I have chosen to be in instead is I call, like, for me, it's the word is flow. I choose to be in the flow. And when I'm in the flow, it's like, imagine yourself down a lazy river. Do you have to do anything but lay there? No, don't. Because you know that the river's going to take you down. You're not like, come on, let's go, right? You're not paddling. You're not getting oars.
Trying to paddle backwards out of it, right? So
right. Your ego is like, is this safe? Is it right? But you're like, I'm good. Hand me my cocktail. I'm going down the lazy river. Like, I'm happy. I'm good. Right. And so imagine what life and business would feel like if you got on your inner tube and you jumped in the lazy river. The waves are there. What you're doing right now is you're trying to go you're like, no, I'm supposed to go this way. Right? The emojis and these, it's like so funny how this happens randomly. I have balloons.
What happens? It's just coming up. There we go. We might have listeners. But you know what, when you were saying that, I was thinking to myself too, like, I am always paranoid about, we go to Hawaii a lot, right? And when you were talking to me about inner tube, we love Hawaii. So my husband's Hawaiian. We go there 3 or 4 times a year. We're probably, it's like our second home, but the vibe and the aloha and the mana and just the feeling of Hawaii, right? It's just so chill. My husband is so chill, and he just follows this mana and this aloha way of life. And I'm like crazy and hyper, and you know, I'm always going and I'm not slowing down, and I do not embody my beingness for the most part. I am very electrically charged too. I have a really high frequency, and I know that. I have issues with interrupting, you know, all the things, right? I could use to definitely slow down. Like my mom and everyone are like, why are you always like, what is this? What are you chasing? You know? But I do have this high frequency. But what I was thinking about as you were talking about the inner tube, I was thinking about, I'm paranoid of riptides. Okay. So it's just a thing that when you talk about that mind game, I have a lot of games that my mind plays on me. One of them is the riptide. And because my husband always talks about visitors in Hawaii and they get taken, you know, by the riptide because they refuse to listen to all the things the Hawaiians tell them about the riptides. And, but you know, it's an analogy to some degree about that fighting the current, right? Like they say, if you just let it go and just go across it, it'll release you. But you know, if you try to fight this riptide, you actually drown, right?
Yep.
And it takes you right under. And so I just thinking, as you were talking to me, I was like, wow, like all the things my husband's been saying about the riptide, you know, and as you were talking about it, I was like, this is exactly what you're doing to yourself, is getting caught in this riptide of like struggle and pain and fighting against what's natural, where if you just let that go and be taken, like they tell you, just let it take you and eventually it will release you. If you fight it though, you get exhausted, you go under, you're drinking water and you're drowning, right? And so it just came to me as a visual when you were, you know, describing the inner tube, and I was like in my mind fighting the riptide when you were talking, you know. And so it's just very interesting how, you know, both sides of that coin are pretty prevalent. So
yeah, and it's a beautiful metaphor. I mean, you know, that's exactly what our default is to fight against. And we think that's going to save us, but that is what is going to drown you. Like that is what is drowning you. And I mean, trust me, like this has been a process. Like, please don't think that I was not like this even 7 years ago. Like my divorce taught me like, wake up, right? Then, you know, I lost my mom to cancer. That was another wake up of like, you've got to be in flow. Like I went from thinking like, how could God do this to me, to, oh, wait, I understand. Like, I have to be in the flow of grief, of it's really grief at the end of the day that we're all sort of experiencing in these little pockets, but really surrendering to what's inside of the grief. You know, the metaphor that I actually use that resonates with me and might be with some of your audience as well is it's really about this transformation of going from the caterpillar to the butterfly, right? And the space that I hold for clients is really the chrysalis. And the chrysalis is the gooey, it's the icky, it's the like transforming, like going from one, you know,
It's
one
ugly. Right?
exactly. But it's the riptide. Like, you could call it the riptide, right? It's what you want to avoid. You're trying to avoid the riptide. You want to avoid the chrysalis because you just want to be the butterfly, right? We all want the breakthrough, but you don't want the break. You just want the through. It's like in that word, when people even say it, there's like emphasis on the through. It's like, I want the breakthrough. Like, you want the through, right?
You don't really want the break, though. That's true. It's true.
You don't, right? And so it's really about that art of surrender and sitting in, right? Like you said, it's like you've got to just get into, like, allow yourself to go into the riptide, follow the current. It's the same thing with the chrysalis. You've got to let yourself morph into the goo and to trust that on the other side. But if you know, we want to control it, right? We have this sense of like, if I know exactly what it's going to be, I'm going to be able to control the outcome. But at the end of the day, we can't control the outcome. Like, it's such a false sense of control. Yes. And imagine if caterpillars, like, we'd have no butterflies, you guys. Like, could you imagine what this world would look like without butterflies? And so think about the next time that you're confronted with this moment of fear, or, you know, if you could choose your intuition, do you want to stay as a caterpillar and prevent the beauty from being seen, right, in the world, for your beauty to be seen and felt in this world? Or do you want to surrender so that you have impact, so that you have change, right? How else can you create a legacy? Butterflies create legacies every day, just flying around. Think about it. You guys, they don't see their wings. They can't see how beautiful they are. Does it stop them from flying around? No, because they've surrendered and they know, like, I'm this beautiful thing now. Like, I've got this toolkit for a reason. I've got these wings, so I'm supposed to fly and I'm supposed to use them. Right? They don't go around going, are my wings pretty? Am I okay? Can I do this job? Am I supposed to fly? Like, am I flying correctly? Am I at the right height? Like, they're just flying. Right? And so if you want to have an impact, if you want to create something of value, of importance in this world, like, just fly. You got the wings, just go do it, right? And trust that the wind's going to carry you, right? This is the whole, like, transmuting, like, your weight into your parachute, right? Look at it as your butterfly wings. And
yeah, I think it's important to reiterate the trust part, because I think we don't trust ourselves because of the stories, right? And
correct.
So whatever has happened has given us this, I always want to call it a blockage, because I feel like it blocks you from the transformation. But this, whatever, this inability, I guess, to be okay and trust yourself. So I think that's where people get stuck, I think, most, or the folks I work with, is just like, trust that you can do this, like, have faith that you can do this. And I think if you come from survival mode as a child, I think you automatically talk that into yourself, or it's like, I think, more natural, because we don't have an option. So it's like, girl, you got to do this. Like, I don't care how scared you are, pedal that bike until you get home. Like, it doesn't matter who's following you, you know, whatever it is, right? Or, you know, yes, this is hard, and yes, this is challenging, but, you know, if you don't do this, what the other options look like, right? I think I fall back a lot on, for me, it is, for sure, like you said, the mind versus the intuition. And I love all the things you just said, because the trust piece, that I think is the hardest for us as humans, to just be like, trust that the right thing is going to happen for you, right? We we want to be in the riptide, I guess, in terms of like, because I'm a control freak. I mean, I'm going to be 100%, I'm going to admit that, right? And all my listeners know this. They know me enough.
Me too. I mean,
I want to control everything. Yeah. I want to make sure that I know that I'm trying my best to control what I can. It is very false though, because in the end, like you said, you don't really have control. It's a false sense of security. But for me, I think the security stems from I want to feel like I can control something, right? Because maybe in the past, my life, whatever, the trauma that I've worked through or am working through came from, hey, I couldn't control all those things happening to me, but I could control my reaction. And so now I'm trying to control my reaction and anything that I can manage controlling, right? Yes. I've been much better the last 10 years. I'd say the last decade. Well, my kids will tell you that's not true, but about my work, I have been a lot better. But with my kids, I find it really hard to let go of and trust that they're going to, be good humans, make the right decisions. Like, it's a constant struggle for me. So
it is. I mean, listen, I've got a child going to college in 26 days. And yes, I'm counting. My firstborn is going to college.
So if you need anything, let me know. Because that first year, I tell you, girl, it is not easy. So
no, yeah. I've cried every day. We just got back from orientation. His dad and I took him for orientation. And, that's what I was saying. Like as soon as like last week, I was in the grief again. I was in this place of, just trying to control like, my own experience of him going to college or trying to help him feel in control. And at the end of the day, like, the school that he's going to, they did such a great job supporting us parents and really,
is he moving out?
He is moving. I'm on the West Coast. He is going to the East Coast, and he is going somewhere that is not a direct flight to. It takes some travel. And he doesn't know anybody, and we don't have any family there. And so, you guys, like, I've had all these stories, and I'm literally thinking to myself, like, I get to trust my son that his dad and I have done the job that we're going to do. And, and one of the speakers was actually a leadership. They have a leadership program at this school. And he came to talk to us. He's like, you need to let your kids struggle. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like totally on board with that. But I'm also like, what am I supposed to do? Like how, like you can say that to the local parents, but what about the 13% of us that are out of state parents that are freaking out going like,
I literally could talk to you about this for 2 hours. I know you have an appointment in like 5 minutes. So, but yes. I am currently in England, in Oxford, because we have 2 kids going to Oxford here for the summer.
Oh, there you go.
Yes. And so I wanted to be on the same continent. Long story short, but I can tell you a lot about this. This is my last 2. My first 2 are in college now. Both went to different colleges. We experienced very different acclimatizations and personalities, and we've been through it. So if you need anything,
yes,
let me know.
I'm working through the tears on a daily basis and working through just the ickiness of it all. And,
but it is really good for them. I will just tell you,
oh yeah,
you work through it, and it is a challenge. But it is, I've seen a transformation, especially in my oldest. He really has embraced this independence. Yeah. And so the second one's younger. It's a little bit different. He's just a different personality too. So it's been a bit different for him. But yeah, you know all the things. And I want to make sure before we end today, because this was awesome and I could talk to you for like 14 hours because I love everything you're saying. But I want to make sure that our listeners can, one, catch your podcast. And so it's called The Power in the Pause. And so is that found anywhere where you can download podcasts?
Yes, it's on any and all podcast platforms, and it has its own YouTube channel as well. So you're welcome to check that out if that's easier for you.
Perfect. So if you can, once we're done the call, if you want to email me all those links, I'll throw them up in the podcast when we throw them up on our YouTube and all of our subscriber stuff, because I want to make sure that these listeners and my folks, friends, family that are on here, that I'm sure are soaking up all of this as well, are able to reach you. And so your website, if you want to let them know where they can, go ahead and find you. I know you are leading the I Can Summit as well. So can you just please give us a few places where they can find you? Socials, websites?
Yeah. Of course. So first and foremost, thank you for having me. This has been a beautiful conversation, and I agree. I mean, we could talk for hours. So you guys are welcome to find me. My website is wendypagesterling.com. I've got a ton of great resources. You can actually even find my podcast there too, if that's easier for you. And then across social media, my handle is Wendy Paige Sterling, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, you name it. That's me. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on the show, for allowing me to speak about this topic that's super, super dear to my heart. So
I'm sure there's 3 more hours I could lovely, I want to pull from you, but I want to make sure Wendy, Wendy Paige, Paige, Sterling.com.
yes.
So I'm going to put it up here. Just make sure that that's right. WendyPageSterling.com.
Yes. Thank you.
So everyone, you can find Wendy at wendypagesterling.com. I found her on LinkedIn, so I thought that was super cool, and subscribe to your newsletter, and a bunch of really awesome information and resources found there. I did pop on your website as well. So, and I'm subscribing to your Power in the Pause. So I think I need a Power in the Pause. So this was probably again, we talked about alignment in the universe.
Yep.
Definitely a reason why I hosted this versus my friend Rach. So thank you, Wendy, for coming on here today. It was perfect timing as I'm going through this next transformation here in our life too, with our kids out here. And so thank you for everything. We super appreciate you. I know you have to hop off, but hopefully we'll have another chat soon. But if not, please, everyone, wendypagesterling.com. You can find her there. We'll end today with health, wealth, and happiness. So I think we got a lot of tidbits today on health and wealth and happiness. Health, obviously your mindset, thinking abundantly, how to unblock all those things that we're dealing with. Wealth of knowledge, I would say, even more than financially. We've just got so much knowledge from you, Wendy, today. And then for health, wealth, and happiness, well, happiness came with, I think, just finding out that we can actually break through this trauma and these blocks to really just embrace abundance and create stillness and beingness, and just embrace that all, rather than hustling and running and doing all the things that I think we're conditioned and programmed in society to do. So again, thank you, Wendy. It's been incredible. We appreciate you so much. Thank you, listeners. glamandgrind.com. Here are episodes. Make sure you're tuning in, and we can't wait to see you next week. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.